Hi, folks. Welcome to the next edition of the Serverless Craic, our podcast. My name's Dave Anderson. I'm a contributor author at the Serverless Edge and technical fellow as our voice. Gentlemen.
Mark McCann, contributor author at the Serverless Edge, stay-at-home dad, sorting out Christmas.
Michael O'Reilly, contributor at Serverless Edge, and also a software architect working with globalization partners.
Good stuff. So today I thought, well, quite a little bit of talk about security this past few weeks, and always see lots of conversations about serverless and security. It's one of the obstacles that people think, there's sometimes a CISO who doesn't want to touch serverless because it's not secure. What do you folks think? Is serverless more secure or less secure?
No, it's a good question. I'm kind of the opinion that it's more secure. And it's more secure because, at a high level, how I would answer it is that, we've talked on previous sessions around rapid delivery. The fact that we're assembling or aggregating various sort of components or managed services together to form a product or a feature or capability. A massive part of that is that, I don't have to worry about the operational side of maintaining the servers that those managed servers run on. So the cloud provider is patching those things and doing those things to a level that a lot of organizations would probably struggle to keep up with. So I think from the infrastructure and the operational side, there's a ton of good security benefits that we get from that. I think the other element of that, tying it back into the rapid delivery thing in serverless, is that serverless, in terms of the approach, is highly opinionated. So there's only so many ways that you can go about assembling your workloads, your services, and those things. You think about, and you can work. Now, it's not to say you can't configure things in security. There still is responsibility there on the app security for application security, that lands with the teams. And I know we'll probably talk about this later, but there's probably a number of things that we do that we've always done, regardless of whether or not we're in serverless or not. But I think serverless definitely gives us more security, but it doesn't mean that we don't take it seriously and that we don't treat it as a fundamental.
Yeah, I think the shared responsibility models is key here, and a lot more of the shared responsibilities for security of the cloud fall onto your cloud provider, AWS in this instance. I think with leveraging higher level building blocks, leveraging managed services, more of that responsibility is on to in most of our cases AWS, and they have some of the best security engineers in the business, and they're very good at articulating and working behind the scenes to patch, harden, secure, and give guidance and stuff. And I know a lot of the vulnerabilities that are announced regularly, and you go and check your app and you find that, oh, by the way, if you're on serverless, if you're on Lambda, we've already taken care of that for you. That vulnerability is being addressed for you. So I think there's a lot of benefit in and letting the cloud provider manage a lot of that and operate a lot of that, because they're going to be better than any sort of internal team that you're ever going to assemble. So I think it's I think serverless is more secure as a default, but you can based on your responsibility, you can make it insecure, right? And that's where some of the guidance around sort of well architected really helps address any of those sort of gaps. So it makes it very clear that any of the responsibilities that are yours and your team are actually taken seriously.
Yeah, there's there's a load of stuff here you could talk about. There's also the risk exposure. If you have a purely serverless application, then you're responsible for application security. And if you mess up application security, maybe somebody might steal a bit of detail or data, hijack a session. That's not good. But it's at an application or a session level. Infrastructure security is handled by the cloud provider. Now, if somebody compromises your infrastructure security regularly, it's ransomware, your whole company is down, game over. It's losing customer data is bad, but losing your entire company's data center is it's catastrophic. So the exposure is slightly less, I think, with serverless. And there's also a part that thinks to me as well is the attitude of security. And it's like the traditional versus modern thinking. The traditional thinking is perimeter detection. We'll build a big high wall, we'll put loads of alarms on it, you're done. But with the modern strategy, it's about securing each asset appropriately to what it contains. So it's like your castle has a big wall around it, but once you get through the gate, you can get access to everything. Well, once you get through the wall, there's additional security because the crown jewels have got crazy security around it. The park out the backyard is fine. You can walk around all day long. There's nothing there you can damage. So, you do need some perimeter protection to kind of keep out the opportunistic hackers, but your real security is in by each asset where it's locked in. And I would fear that many companies still have perimeter access.
Yeah. I think we're evolving from castle and moat type mentality to much more zero trust, where you assess the trust as you go through, and every individual component has its own security boundaries, and there's strength and depth there. And we can talk all day about the zero trust type mentality, but I think serverless helps enable a zero trust security stance.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think a lot of those challenges exist if you're in with a cloud provider or in your own data center, regardless. But where I do think you get a wee bit of a lift is that within the cloud provider, I've found certainly since kind of moving into serverless type workloads and things like that, is you do have a wee bit more capacity for thinking about like your authentication, your authorization kind of designs and processes, your touch points, boundaries with regards to those things. And I've certainly had a lot more time to design those things, and certainly a lot of those services are flexible to those sorts of designs as well. Whereas, I mean, if you're in the data centers and you're kind of working across a polyglot, then you kind of have to support many different sort of CUTs type capability that can become challenging. So I think there's a certain degree of flexibility, or what's the word? It's a wee bit more accessible, I think.
Do you think with serverless and all the responsibility shifting left, teams have more visibility, more ownership, more control over security, where in the past, in the traditional sort of architectures and systems we worked on, security was almost taken care for you by another team, and you weren't really exposed to it. It was like you mentioned, Dave, it's on the perimeter somewhere, and it'll be fine. The perimeter will catch up. We don't need to worry about security. Whereas now, it's much more it's much more of a requirement for the team to actually understand this and have a handle on it. Even though the burden is lowered, they still need to be aware of it. They still need to own it. They still need to do a test for it and secure it.
Shift left, and
it's no longer shift left. I mean, met a guy at reInvent, a guy called Ian Heritage, and his talk was about don't shift left, start left. Because I mean, this is just how you need to do. You need to identify your assets day one and establish that, that access control from the off. So it's now part of what you need to do. So I think that's very interesting. And also, Mike, you mentioned authentication and authorization. I think people are beginning to understand this better now. You can be authenticated to get in somewhere, but still not authorized to do a bunch of stuff. A lot of traditional security was you're authenticated, okay, I'm in, okay, let's go nuts, I can do everything. So that's that understanding authorization as a design consideration day one is absolutely critical. It's hard to retrofit that.
Yeah, I think there's been maturity around what security means for serverless workloads as well. We're seeing the emergence of the OWASP serverless top 10, which is great. The OWASP sort of top 10 has been something we've fallen back on a lot in our careers, right? How did you hear something? Well, let's go check what OS was saying and let's make sure we're covered for it. So it's good to see a tailored version of that for serverless workloads. And a lot of it is around standard stuff that we would be addressing, but it's good to see it called out that there may be a different attack vectors here. There's more the code that you use, that the dependencies and npm that you bring in. There's all of these sort of things you need to be aware of. But it's good that there's you can just Google for this now, the OWASP serverless top 10, and you can get some good advice.
Yeah. So what about security itself? I mean, like, do we still need a security department if developers can start left, or do we still need a security presence, evil security people and good developers? I thought the relationship between security and developers is very important. And just for the record, I don't think security are evil. So
No.
somebody will press a button on me.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this, maybe not publicly, but we don't want security to be an enabler, right? You don't want it to be the department of no, and historically that may be in the perception, but typically the ones we've interacted with, they're they're brilliant people. They have buckets of integrity, and they're trying to do the right thing, and trying to balance a lot of different concerns. Speed versus security, and all these other sort of traditional stuff, pen down tech debt versus going fast on new stuff. So I think they're some of the best people in the industry are in security. So they're definitely not something that you want to shy away from. You want to have a good working relationship with them and take them on the journey with you as you explore new stuff.
Well, it's a symbiotic thing. Come back to what you said earlier in the call about the shared responsibility between, say, the developer and the cloud provider. It's the same thing between the developer and, say, cybersecurity or the security department in your organization. You got to have a good working relationship there, like a supportive one. So, like, what I mean by that is, we talked about this in previous sort of discussions around, like, the amount of responsibility or stuff that a serverless team has to take responsibility for. So it's like security, reliability, resiliency, performance, cost, the operational side. Security is in that. And I think the application team has a duty to take security seriously. And I think if they're doing that, normally the relationships with the cybersecurity is quite a good one, because one, the interactions can be actually quite productive in that it can be a consult or a coaching type session. Actually, we're they say as part of threat modeling, you should never invent your own mitigations. You should be really using well-known ones. So you need that expertise within the organization. So if you're not sure, it's always kind of good to have that support from cybersecurity expert to consult with, and to almost just give you that confidence that, yep, you have taken a good approach to security within your workload, and you haven't come up with something that isn't a good mitigation to a particular threat, or so I think it's a symbiotic thing. I think it can be quite complementary when everyone's kind of working at a good level.
Yeah, but I think it needs to start. You need to talk to security people and understand what they're trying to do. So that's the crack. Good fun. So more about on the serverlessedge.com blog, and on Twitter we're on at serverlessedge. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.